In the far reaches of the galaxy, there existed a race feared across every star system, a species so powerful, so ruthlessly efficient in their hunt, that entire civilizations trembled at the mere mention of their name. The Zalrock were apex predators, unmatched by anything the galaxy had ever known. Their reputation stretched far beyond the stars, carried in hushed whispers across planets that had learned the hard way that resistance was futile. They were relentless hunters, their senses so fine-tuned that nothing, no living creature, could escape their pursuit. For millennia, they dominated the hunting grounds of the galaxy, taking whatever they pleased. Whether it was the mighty predators of distant worlds or the sapient species that once thought themselves safe in the comfort of their advanced technologies, the Zalrock had hunted them all. Their physical prowess was unparalleled. Standing at towering heights, with massive frames built for both power and speed, they were equipped with claws, teeth, and senses that rendered them nearly invincible in the wilds. Their hunting methods were perfected over generations, tracking their prey with precision, using advanced technologies that allowed them to anticipate, corner, and capture even the most elusive of creatures. There was no escape, no way out. To be hunted by the Zalrock was to know your end was certain. It wasn't just physical dominance that made the Zalrock feared. It was their meticulous, cold, and calculated approach to every hunt. They did not merely kill for survival. The Zalrock hunted for sport, for the thrill of the chase, and for the power it gave them. To capture and destroy another sentient being was their highest form of achievement, their rites of passage. Entire species had been hunted to extinction. What remained of those worlds was just desolate, empty ruins, testaments to the Zalrock's relentless and methodical approach to wiping out those they deemed unworthy. And yet, despite their unmatched prowess, the Zalrock had recently encountered a problem they had never anticipated, a species that could not be easily outsmarted, a species that refused to go down without a fight. This species, despite being new and relatively primitive, had somehow gained the respect of the galaxy's most feared hunters. They were humans. It started when the Zalrock first encountered humanity. The Zalrock had been surveying the fringes of the galaxy when they came across the human race. At first, they dismissed humanity as nothing more than a primitive species, beneath their notice. Humans lived on Earth, a planet filled with rudimentary technologies and a barely organized society. To the Zalrock, humans were no different from the countless other species they had encountered and eradicated. Weak, vulnerable, insignificant. The Zalrock were a species that could take what they wanted. Humans, like the others, would be no different. Their initial attempt to hunt humans came under the command of Draxer, one of the most feared warlords in Zalrock history. The hunt was simple, almost a formality. He brought his fleet to Earth, and his team descended to the surface, expecting the hunt to be over quickly. What they didn't count on was the chaotic unpredictability of humanity. No matter how well they thought they had prepared, no matter how skilled their trackers and warriors, the humans managed to throw them off at every turn. The Zalrock's first major misstep came when they underestimated human creativity. They thought humans were predictable, but they quickly realized how wrong they were. The humans used their environment to their advantage in ways the Zalrock had never seen. Simple tools became deadly weapons. Ordinary landscapes were turned into traps. The Zalrock warriors, used to fighting opponents who either fled in fear or tried to overpower them with brute force, were taken by surprise. Humans fought with wit, not strength. They set up ambushes, used decoys, and employed psychological warfare that baffled the Zalrock. Sergeant Mikhail, a human soldier of no great renown, became the symbol of this bizarre resistance. He was not the biggest or strongest, nor was he a warrior of great skill in the traditional sense. What made him dangerous was his mind. Mikhail saw the Zalrock as more than just a threat. He saw them as something to be outsmarted, something to be humiliated. He used absurdity as his greatest weapon. He set traps using everyday objects, made the Zalrock believe they were facing an army when in fact they were battling a few determined humans in the wilderness. And it worked. The Zalrock's elite team, used to eliminating their prey with surgical precision, found themselves caught in situations where nothing made sense. Their powerful senses could not track what was invisible, and their technology couldn't account for the unpredictable nature of human behavior. The hunters became the hunted. Every trap Mikhail set drove the Zalrock deeper into confusion, deeper into their own mistakes. And then came the final confrontation. Draxer, the warlord who had led the hunt, found himself face to face with the human who had been the thorn in his side. It was a one-on-one battle, no weapons, just a raw clash of survival instincts. Mikhail, knowing that strength alone would not win, fought with a mind that saw the world differently. He used every trick in the book, turning Draxer's own pride and overconfidence against him. In a moment that shocked the entire Zalrock hierarchy, Mikhail emerged victorious. The battle sent shockwaves throughout Zalrock society. A human, no matter how skilled or resourceful, should not have been able to defeat a Zalrock warlord. This had never happened before. The Zalrock had been the ultimate predators, and now they had been shown that there was a species out there capable of not only surviving but defeating them. It wasn't just the defeat itself that terrified the Zalrock. It was the realization that the humans didn't play by the same rules. The Zalrock were a species of order, of structure, of control. They followed the rules of the hunt. Humans, on the other hand, thrived in chaos. They embraced the unexpected. And that made them far more dangerous than any weapon or technology the Zalrock could wield. This new understanding shook the Zalrock to their core. For the first time, they were faced with an enemy they could not predict, an enemy who could outthink them. The Zalrock began to fear what they could not control, and humanity's reputation spread across the galaxy. Stories of the defeat of Draxer and his crew became legend, and whispers began to spread, "Do not hunt humans." It was not that the Zalrock feared humans in the traditional sense. It was something deeper. They feared what they could not understand. Humans were unpredictable. They did not follow the same rules of the universe that the Zalrock did. And that made them a far more terrifying foe than any creature the Zalrock had ever hunted. The Zalrock began to change. No longer was hunting humanity a goal. No longer was it a sport. It became an unspoken rule among them: do not hunt humans. The fear of facing another Mikhail, another unpredictable, ingenious human, was enough to stop them from pursuing the species altogether. The Zalrock had encountered many dangerous species throughout their reign, but none had ever given them pause like humans had. In the end, it wasn't strength, size, or power that stopped the Zalrock. It was the thing they feared the most, the unknown. And humanity, for all its flaws and imperfections, had shown that the unknown could be more dangerous than anything the Zalrock could ever conceive. The galaxy's reputation of the Zalrock as the deadliest predators in existence remained unchanged. They had destroyed countless species, from the most powerful to the most fragile, and every corner of the galaxy knew the terrifying implications of crossing their path. Yet, a strange shift was happening. The Zalrock were no longer hunting humans, a species that, to most of the galaxy, still appeared primitive and unthreatening. The change in the Zalrock's behavior was noticeable, even if not openly discussed. No one dared to question the Zalrock's decision, not even those who had seen firsthand the devastation they could bring. It was a topic too taboo, too sensitive. The Zalrock had placed an embargo on hunting humans, but why? Cassius Ford, a young human diplomat, had been sent on a crucial mission to navigate the increasing tensions between various galactic species, one of which was the Zalrock. The galaxy was on the brink of war, and the Zalrock were at the center of it. For weeks, Cassius worked in the dark corridors of interspecies politics, struggling to maintain some form of peace between warring factions. But there was one issue he couldn't avoid: the Zalrock's avoidance of human star. At first, Cassius thought it was just another political maneuver, a temporary shift in behavior caused by the Zalrock's own internal struggles. But as he dug deeper, it became clear that something much deeper was at play. The Zalrock were not avoiding humans for strategic reasons, they were avoiding them out of fear. And that fear, Cassius realized, stemmed from something no one had expected: a human victory. Cassius began by meeting with some of the high-ranking Zalrock officials to gather insight. The Zalrock were known for their direct, blunt manner, and they didn't often engage in pleasantries. Their meetings were terse, pragmatic. It wasn't easy to get them to open up, but Cassius was skilled in diplomacy. He approached the topic carefully, under the guise of seeking mutual understanding, always using the right words to push the conversation toward the taboo subject: the Zalrock's decision to stop hunting humans. It wasn't long before Cassius learned that the decision had nothing to do with any formal treaty or political agreement. The Zalrock had not decided to halt their hunts out of concern for diplomatic relations. In fact, it was the opposite. Their decision was based purely on fear of humans, a species they could not predict, a species they could not control. Cassius learned that the Zalrock's reluctance to hunt humans was not out of respect, but out of sheer terror. The Zalrock had tried to hunt humans, but they had made one fatal mistake: they underestimated the unpredictable nature of humanity. The Zalrock had always prided themselves on their ability to outthink, outsmart, and overpower their prey. They understood the dynamics of fear, the behavior of their enemies, the psychology of every species they had hunted. They had done so for centuries. Humans, however, were different. They didn't follow the same rules. They weren't predictable. They fought with creativity, chaos, and an almost absurd lack of fear. It wasn't that the humans were stronger. It wasn't even that they were more skilled. The humans won because they refused to be categorized, refused to play by the Zalrock's rules. They fought with unpredictability, with sheer, untamable ingenuity. Cassius had heard stories about the Zalrock's first encounter with humanity. It began when Draxxur, one of the Zalrock's fiercest warlords, led an expedition to Earth to hunt the humans. They had expected an easy victory, a quick kill. But instead, they encountered a species that fought back in ways that no one, not even the Zalrock, had ever imagined. It was the story of Sergeant Mikhail that had captured the Zalrock's attention. Mikhail, a soldier with no formal training in combat strategy, had single-handedly turned the tide against the Zalrock invaders. It wasn't just Mikhail's ability to fight that had rattled the Zalrock. It was his unpredictability, his ability to make decisions that didn't make sense. Mikhail used what the Zalrock saw as trivial, useless things, everyday objects, mundane traps, and turned them into deadly weapons. He built traps out of garbage, used tools that were not designed for warfare, and played psychological games that confused and disoriented the Zalrock. The warlord Draxxur was defeated by Mikhail in a one-on-one fight, but it wasn't a fight of strength, it was a battle of wits, a battle that Mikhail had won with ingenuity and courage. The Zalrock had not been prepared for that. For the Zalrock, the loss was humiliating. They had never been defeated by such a primitive species, let alone in such a bizarre manner. Their confidence shattered. The loss of Draxxur's fleet and the resulting humiliation had echoed through Zalrock society. The Zalrock were used to being in control, to being the ones who determined the rules. For the first time in their history, they were confronted with a species that refused to be controlled, a species that laughed in the face of their methods and won by defying everything they understood. What the Zalrock learned was that humans didn't fit neatly into any category. They didn't have the predictable patterns of behavior that most other species had. Where other prey species had fought back through fear, violence, or escape, humans fought through confusion, absurdity, and chaos. The Zalrock were used to hunting predictable creatures that could be easily analyzed, easily understood. Humans, however, were a complete unknown, a variable that could not be accounted for. And that uncertainty, that fear of what might happen next, was enough to make the Zalrock rethink their hunting practices. The idea of hunting humans had always been one of pure conquest, until the humans forced the Zalrock to admit something they had never considered before, that there were risks involved. Draxxur's death was not just a loss of leadership, it was a sign that Zalrock hunting could fail. And failure, for a species built on the idea of dominance and fear, was something they could not afford. It was this fear that led to the Zalrock's decision to avoid hunting humans altogether. They had tried to hunt them, but the results were too costly. The Zalrock didn't fear the humans in the way they feared other species. It was worse than fear, it was unpredictability that they could not handle. The uncertainty that the humans brought was too great a risk, too much of a challenge for a species that thrived on certainty and control. The embargo on hunting humans, as strange as it seemed, was a survival instinct. The Zalrock understood now that humanity was a force they could not understand or predict, and for the first time in their long history, they chose to leave them alone, not out of respect, but out of fear of facing another Mikhail. The decision was quiet, unspoken, but it was felt throughout the galaxy. The Zalrock were afraid of humanity, and that fear spread like wildfire. Cassius could feel the weight of the revelation bearing down on him. The Zalrock had been hunting throughout the galaxy for centuries, conquering species with ease, leaving destruction in their wake. To hear that they had been so profoundly humbled by humanity was a jarring realization. He wasn't sure if he could even fully grasp the gravity of what he was learning. The notion that humans, so often underestimated by the galactic powers, had turned the Zalrock into hesitant, fearful beings was beyond belief. But as he dug deeper, Cassius understood that the fear didn't stop with the Zalrock. The ripple effect had spread across the galaxy. Once the news of the Zalrock's humiliating defeat had reached other species, it sparked a wave of respect and fear. There was something about humanity's victory that stirred something primal in the hearts of galactic leaders. Species that had once dismissed humans as a minor threat or an unimportant blip on the galactic map were now considering them with newfound caution. It wasn't just that humans had survived their encounter with the Zalrock. No, the truth was far stranger. Humanity had managed to win by being unpredictable, by doing the exact opposite of what anyone, including the Zalrock, had expected. Cassius had already suspected that humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology or sheer strength but in their creativity. The most dangerous humans were the ones who didn't play by the rules. They could turn something seemingly mundane into a deadly weapon. In the case of Draxler and his expedition, Sergeant Mikhail had used his environment, his sheer will, and his refusal to submit to the Zalrock's expectations to win. He used traps, mind games, even humor as tools. To the Zalrock, who saw the universe in terms of power dynamics and brute force, this was a revelation that sent shockwaves through their entire species. But what Cassius hadn't anticipated was how the rest of the galaxy would respond. He assumed that other species would simply shrug off the incident, chalk it up to a fluke or an anomaly. The Zalrock were strong, and the galactic order had always revolved around them being the apex predator. However, something had changed. Even now, in the midst of tense diplomatic talks, Cassius could feel the undercurrent of respect and fear emanating from the alien species around him. The other factions, who, until recently, had been fighting among themselves, were beginning to look to humanity as a symbol of resilience, unpredictability, and strength. It was as though the galaxy had been handed a mirror, and humanity had forced everyone to take a long, hard look at themselves. While the Zalrock had built their reputation on being unchallenged in their dominance, humans had proven that even the mightiest predators could be brought low by their inability to predict the unexpected. The sheer absurdity of it, the fact that humanity had beaten the Zalrock using strategies that were as chaotic as they were brilliant, left the galaxy on edge. It made Cassius realize something else. Humanity was no longer just a new species in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with. During one of the diplomatic meetings, Cassius could feel the room's atmosphere shift as he mentioned Earth's unexpected victory over the Zalrock. It wasn't just the Zalrock who feared humanity now. Several species, including the Threxian and the Zyrax, started to exchange uneasy glances. There was something else there, something that wasn't entirely about diplomacy. It was about humanity's unpredictability, a force that they couldn't grasp, a thing that no one could truly control. Humans had proven to the galaxy that their unpredictability wasn't just an annoyance, it was a weapon. In the quiet moments, when Cassius sat in his quarters reflecting on what he had learned, the enormity of the situation weighed heavily on him. He had always believed in humanity's potential, but now, he realized that this potential wasn't just about surviving, it was about adapting and thriving when all odds were against them. Humanity's victory wasn't a story of raw strength or military might. It was a story of wit, of adaptability, of using absurdity and humor to throw off the most terrifying predators in the galaxy. Cassius began to understand that the Zalrock weren't just afraid of human strength or technological advancement. They were afraid because humans could adapt faster than any other species in the galaxy. A Xyrax could overpower an enemy, and a Threxian could outthink most species in a battle of tactics. But humanity had a unique gift, an ability to think outside the box, to surprise and deceive in ways that others could never anticipate. And that, more than anything, made humanity terrifying to those who sought control over the galaxy. The diplomatic situation was growing more complicated by the day. It wasn't just the Xalraq's decision to refrain from hunting humans. The power dynamics across the galaxy were shifting. The sudden increase in respect for humanity, fueled by stories of Sergeant Mikhail's triumph, meant that other species were starting to reconsider their alliances. Would they choose to side with the unpredictable humans? Or would they see humanity as a potential threat? Cassius knew that humanity's future on the galactic stage would depend on how they navigated this new perception. The stakes were higher than ever before. Cassius didn't want to jump to conclusions, but one thing was clear: humanity was no longer the underdog in the galaxy. They had earned their place, and with it came an enormous responsibility. How would they wield this new power? How would humanity adapt to the changing tides, now that the galaxy saw them in a new light? The Xalraq's fear wasn't just about losing one battle. It was about realizing that they could no longer be certain of their place in the galaxy. The Xalraq had prided themselves on being at the top of the food chain, but humanity's victory was a stark reminder that no predator was truly invincible. As more species began to see humanity as a symbol of defiance, a new sense of strength began to emerge within Cassius. Humanity's reputation was shifting from a mere survivor to a formidable force, one that might just change the course of the galaxy itself. The diplomat, though still young and learning, began to understand the weight of the role that humans now held. The galaxy was watching, and they had to be careful not to be swept up in the tidal wave of fear and respect that was building in response to humanity's unexpected victory. Whether the galaxy embraced them or feared them, one thing was certain: humanity was here to stay. Cassius spent the following days in a haze of urgent negotiations and constant pressure. The revelation of humanity's unexpected victory over the Xalraq had already sent ripples across the galaxy, and now, the truth of it was spreading faster than he could keep up with. He had come to understand that the galaxy's perception of humanity was shifting rapidly, and with it, a new weight of responsibility. It wasn't just the Xalraq who feared the humans now. Other factions, too, began to view humanity not as a weak or insignificant species, but as a potential wildcard, one that could destabilize the entire galaxy if mishandled. The Xalraq's refusal to hunt humans wasn't just about preserving their own honor. It was about recognizing that humanity could no longer be predicted, controlled, or contained. Humans had proven that, when cornered, they would not behave according to the established rules of warfare. Where others might submit or retreat, humans would fight back with cunning, creativity, and an almost reckless disregard for conventional tactics. This realization, to the other species, was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. It meant that humanity could not be defeated in the way other species could. There was no straightforward approach to dealing with them, no single method of controlling them. In private meetings with the various factions, Cassius could feel the weight of their suspicion, their awe, and yes, their fear. Even when the discussion seemed to be heading toward peaceful resolutions, there was always an undercurrent of unease. Some of the older species had lived through the glory days of their own empires, where they had effortlessly wiped out weaker civilizations. They had not accounted for a species like humanity, one that could come from nowhere and suddenly throw everything into chaos. Cassius understood that the Xalraq's fear wasn't just about one battle lost, it was about a shift in the fundamental power structure of the galaxy. No longer was brute strength the deciding factor in survival. Where once the galaxy's strongest predators had held a commanding position, humanity had now shown that the ability to think outside the box, to adapt and innovate, could be just as deadly, if not more so, than physical strength. This realization was one that none of the galactic powers had fully prepared for, and it was unsettling to every species involved in the negotiations. As Cassius spent more time in these tense, charged meetings, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was at a crossroads. The old guard, the species that had once ruled over others through force and fear, couldn't understand how humanity had turned their world upside down. Humans had defied expectations in a way that no one else had. They had managed to beat the Zaurok by exploiting their own assumptions, using their most basic instincts of survival and creativity. They hadn't fought a battle on the Zaurok's terms, they had rewritten the terms entirely. What was most striking to Cassius, however, was the realization that humanity's potential, once seen as a minor threat, was now becoming something much larger. Humanity had become a symbol. To some, they were a symbol of resistance, proof that even the most feared predators could be outwitted. To others, they were a symbol of chaos, a reminder that the galaxy was no longer predictable, no longer safe. Where once the galaxy had been united by fear of the Zaurok, that fear had now fractured into a broader uncertainty. If humans could defeat the Zaurok, what other imbalances could they tip over? This new status quo created challenges. Cassius found himself in an even more precarious position than before. He had to negotiate with the same factions that feared humanity's potential. The stakes were higher now, with many factions reconsidering their alliances, rethinking their strategies. The perception of humans had gone from weak and insignificant to unpredictable and dangerous. Cassius was no longer just a diplomat trying to keep the peace. He was a symbol of humanity's potential, carrying on his shoulders the responsibility of guiding humanity through this new, uncertain landscape. The Zaurok's ban on hunting humans wasn't just a strange anomaly in the hunting patterns of a predatory species. It was a reflection of something deeper, something fundamental about the nature of power. The Zaurok had prided themselves on being the ultimate apex predator, the top of the food chain, but humanity had shattered that illusion. The Zaurok had believed themselves invincible, until they were brought face to face with a species that didn't care about the rules, that didn't conform to the same standards of behavior as every other prey species they had encountered. Humanity had forced them to confront their own weakness, their inability to predict a species that operated outside their understanding of logic and reason. Now, as Cassius sat across from the other leaders of the galaxy, he couldn't help but feel the weight of that truth. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for a place in the galaxy, a place among the most powerful, unpredictable forces in existence. But with that came a tremendous burden. Humanity had to navigate a galaxy that saw them both as a threat and an ally, a species that had earned respect and fear in equal measure. Cassius knew that humanity would have to learn to live with this new reality. No longer would they be the underdogs, the weak, fledgling species trying to carve out their place in a vast, hostile universe. Humanity had earned a new position in the galaxy, one that carried with it both tremendous opportunity and enormous risk. They were now seen as a wildcard, and while that brought power, it also brought challenges. The question for Cassius, and for humanity as a whole, was how they would wield this new power. Would they become just another faction playing the same power game as everyone else? Or would they embrace the chaos that had allowed them to survive and thrive? The Zaurok had made their decision to avoid humanity out of fear, but humanity still had to decide how to navigate their place in the galaxy, how to use their unpredictability, their ingenuity, and their ability to think beyond the confines of tradition to forge a new path forward. And as the galaxy's newest, most unpredictable power, humanity would have to make its own future. One thing was clear. The days of being underestimated were over. The Zaurok had been the first to learn that lesson. The rest of the galaxy would soon follow.